and welcome back to Dessert Devotion. I can't wait to share with you one of my mama's well-loved dessert recipes and an inspiring devotion. Here's how to make my mama's homemade banana pudding. An old-fashioned banana pudding begins with a homemade custard. So first we've got to take 6 eggs and separate the egg whites from the yolks. The yolks are going to go in our custard and the egg whites are going to be used in our meringue. And no, I don't have any fancy separating tool. I've always just used the shells like my mom does. So we're just going to beat up these egg yolks and we'll put both of these aside. Now we're going to get started on our custard. I'm going to start with 1 cup of whole milk and pour in 2/3 cups of flour. And then I'm going to whisk it together. I like to start this way, my mom showed me, to get all of the lumps out of the flour before I put it on the stove to start cooking down our pudding. Now I'm going to add that milk and flour mixture to my saucepan. Then I'll add my sugar, that's 1 3/4 cups. After a few minutes of patiently stirring this on low heat, you can see that it begins to thicken up. And then I'm going to slowly add in my egg yolks. Sometimes if you feel like the mixture is too hot, you can temper your eggs by taking a little bit of the mixture, right, that's hot, and putting a little bit into the eggs to kind of bring them up to a higher temp, and then pouring that egg yolk mixture slowly back into your pudding. And then I'll add the rest of my liquid. That's a 12-ounce can of evaporated milk and then another 4 ounces of whole milk. I'll stir this into my pudding mixture and keep cooking it on low on the stove, constantly stirring until I get a nice pudding consistency. My last ingredient is a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract. I'm satisfied with the thickness of my pudding and the taste, so I'm going to take it off the heat and give it one final whisk just to remove any last-minute lumps. Now here's the fun part, putting it together. I'll start with the layer of those Nilla Wafers, then a layer of sliced bananas. Now I'll spoon in about 1/3 of my pudding. Now I like to add a bonus layer of just cookies in the middle. Then another 1/3 of my pudding mixture. And finally, another layer of cookies and bananas. And the final 1/3 of my pudding. Ooh, this is looking good. Now it's time to get started on that meringue. You're going to take your 6 egg whites and add a 1/4 cup of sugar and a tablespoon of water. Now let me tell you something. I would not recommend putting the sugar in first. I don't even know why I did that. Then I was stuck praying the whole time I'm whipping my meringue on high speed, hoping it's still going to come together. And it did. But I would recommend starting with just the 6 egg whites and your water and then slowly add in your sugar afterwards. Thankfully, my prayers were answered, and as you can see, this meringue is thickening up nicely. And when it starts to peak and make waves like that, then you know you're ready to stop and pour that onto your pudding. When I bake my meringue, I always think about my church grandmother, Miss Fisher, who would always say, make sure when you make a meringue that you seal the edges. Just make sure that meringue is touching the edges all the way around the pan so that it doesn't weep or get runny. It cooks all the way through and toasts nicely. I have my oven set on 500 degrees or broil, and I'm going to toast this for 2 minutes. And don't you dare walk away from that oven. Isn't that nice? Now, we've got to put our banana pudding in the fridge for at least 3 hours. And y'all, it's going to taste even better tomorrow. Okay, now that our banana pudding is in the fridge, let's settle in for a time of devotion. Let's talk a little bit. I imagine that you may be carrying a few burdens. All of us are. a few anxieties, some things that you are worried about. And it's time for us to talk about what we're going to do about that. I mean, how long can you carry all of the burdens and the obligations that you are responsible for? I don't know how you got there, and that's really not important in life. Sometimes we can't control that. Sometimes these obligations are things that we have taken on knowingly, that we anticipated. Sometimes our responsibilities are things that are kind of thrust upon us, and we have to just rise to the occasion. Sometimes we've taken on obligations that maybe, we should have said no to, but we said yes. So until we can do better, what now? Well, we can feel hopeless about it. We can get angry about it. We can be frustrated about it. We can feel overwhelmed, or we can cast those cares on the Lord. 1 Peter 5:7 says, "Cast all your anxieties on the Lord because he cares for you." I love that some versions that you may be more familiar with say, "Cast your cares upon the Lord." I think my favorite is the Common English Bible. It says, "Throw your anxieties on the Lord." I love that one because sometimes I need to throw them as far away from me as possible. Why? Because sometimes once I pray about the things that are on my mind, or pray about the responsibilities that I have, sometimes I am tempted to go back and pick it up. Knowing that it is a God-sized problem, knowing that there is only a God-sized solution to it, knowing that only God can do it, I still am sometimes tempted to not cast my cares completely on the Lord and leave them with the Lord and trust God with them. I read a little while ago a story by author David Mackenzie. He says that in his home, he created a prayer bag, and it was simply a bag that he wrote God on the front of, and he taped it on the very top of his kitchen door. And any time that he or someone had a concern or a prayer concern, they'd write it down on a piece of paper. He said often he would pray about being a better dad, or being a better husband, or maybe something about his career, about his job at work, and he would place those little slips of paper in the bag. But the rule in his house was, once you put it in the bag as a prayer to God, if you started worrying about it again, you had to take your happy self into the kitchen, climb up on a chair, and pull that request out, right? Because you haven't really turned it over to God yet. And when you were ready, I guess you could just go back and then put it back into the bag. I think it is a great way for us and how we practice prayer. Let's be serious about not just praying about it as some sort of rumination, but truly casting those cares upon the Lord, truly giving those burdens over to God, and in faith knowing that Jesus is our advocate, loves us, has died for us, and that God will answer our prayers. So let's not just say the verse that's so familiar to many of us. Let's live it out. Cast your burdens, your cares, your anxieties on the Lord, and leave them there. Amen. I am so happy to share with you one of our family favorites, and I hope it'll become a favorite of your families too. Thanks for joining me, and for more sweet devotions, check out my website at desertdevotion.com.